Dust swirled through the narrow canyon pass like a restless herd. The woman stopped, breathless, knees scratching against the dry brush. Her chest burned like a knife's edge. Ahead, a piercing cry echoed against the rocks. Then she saw it. A barefoot Apache child, wrists bound with frayed rope, sprawled on the ground while two horsemen closed in, laughing. "Leave him!" the woman shouted, her voice carrying an unexpected force. The stone in her hand flew before she realized it, striking the leading rider's shoulder. He cursed and yanked his horse back. The other raised his whip. For a heartbeat, time froze. She remembered how her father's ranch had been taken for unpaid taxes, how the village watched in silence, and the vow she had whispered that day. She would never bow again. The riders hesitated. One clenched his teeth and bellowed, "Out of our way, woman!" Her knees trembled, but she stepped forward, heart beating not with fear, but with fury. The terror in the child's eyes turned every wound inside her into a single, blazing fire. A shadow swept across them. Through the haze of distant smoke, more riders emerged. Seeing their numbers, the attackers tugged their reins and wheeled away in a storm of dust. As she gathered the child into her arms, a larger band appeared on the horizon. Dozens of Apaches with painted faces and raised spears. The elder warrior at the front narrowed his eyes at her. Her heartbeat matched the moan of the wind. 3 days later, when they came to her door, no one could guess what they would demand. Her name was Eleanor Hart. The child's thin arms clung to her neck as she steadied her breath. The canyon held its own quiet now, a silence that pressed like a weight. Eleanor turned, searching for movement in the pale dusk. The riders were gone, but their hoofbeats still shivered through the stone walls. The boy trembled. Eleanor loosened the knots around his wrists. The rope left deep red grooves on the small brown hands. He whispered something she could not catch. "It's all right," Eleanor said, her voice low. She wasn't sure if he understood. From the ridge came the distant creak of leather, the faint jingle of metal. Eleanor stiffened. Shapes gathered in the orange haze. Riders, many. Her father's voice from years past slid into her mind. "You can't hold land you can't pay for." The county men had arrived at dawn then, their papers crisp and final. The neighbors watched from behind half-closed doors. Not one had spoken for her. The boy shifted. His dark eyes searched hers, wide and unblinking. "Stay behind me," she whispered. The first warrior rode close enough for her to see the red streaks across his cheekbones. The others fanned out in a slow arc. The horses moved without hurry, dust rising with each step. A man at their center, broad shoulders, braided hair, the calm of someone used to command, studied her. His name she did not know yet, Caleb Greyhawk. He looked at the boy, then at her. No one spoke. Wind dragged a thin whistle across the canyon floor. Eleanor tightened her hold on the child. Caleb's gaze stayed on her, steady and unreadable as the circle of riders closed. Eleanor kept her back straight, though her legs ached. The boy clung to her waist now, his face hidden in the folds of her skirt. Dust settled in slow layers across her boots. Caleb Greyhawk raised one hand. The riders halted as if a single breath had frozen them. Their horses stamped, tails flicking at the dry air. A younger warrior broke the stillness. He spoke in a low, sharp rhythm Eleanor could not follow. Caleb listened, then answered in the same tongue. His voice carried a quiet authority that made the others fall back a step. Eleanor swallowed. "I found him tied up." 2 men, white men, were taking him. Her words felt heavy, out of place. Caleb turned his eyes on her, dark and level. "You cut the ropes?" "Yes." He studied the boy's wrists, then her hands. "Why?" She hesitated. Her father's last winter came back, how the neighbors whispered while her debts grew. Not one had offered help. "Because it was wrong," she said finally. Caleb's gaze lingered, unreadable. He spoke again to the younger warrior. The man rode off at once, dust lifting behind him. Eleanor tightened her hold on the boy. "Is he your kin?" Caleb nodded once. "My sister's son." The boy stirred but stayed silent. From the ridge came the faint crack of distant rifle fire. Caleb's head snapped toward the sound. A murmur passed through the riders. Eleanor's heart quickened. "Those men, they'll come back?" Caleb looked at her, eyes narrowing against the fading light. "Maybe," he said. "And not alone." The wind shifted. A chill slid through the canyon as if night had arrived early. Caleb lowered his voice. "You will ride with us, for now." Eleanor felt the boy's small fingers tighten around her own. Night settled without a moon. The canyon walls faded to black shapes, the air carrying a dry chill that sank through Eleanor's coat. She rode a borrowed pony behind Caleb, the boy pressed against her chest. His breathing stayed shallow and quick. No one spoke. Hooves struck stone in a slow, even rhythm. Sparks from a single torch danced across the riders' faces. Eleanor watched their shoulders sway with each step, the quiet discipline of men used to long miles and watchful nights. Her thoughts kept circling back to the sound of rifle fire. She pictured the two men she had driven off, faces she barely saw, only the flash of their whips. They would not forgive the humiliation. Caleb slowed his horse until he rode beside her. The torchlight cut across his face, high cheekbones, a thin scar along his jaw. "You have a name?" he asked. "Eleanor Hart." He gave a short nod. "You live near the trading post?" 3 miles east." Caleb glanced ahead at the boy. "Your land? Safe?" Eleanor gripped the reins tighter. "Not anymore. County took it. I stay on what was my father's, but it isn't mine." His eyes lingered on her, then shifted back to the trail. Silence returned, heavier now. The riders crested a low rise. Below lay a dry creek bed where a single fire burned low. Women moved between the shadows, children huddled close to the glow. Caleb dismounted first. He lifted the boy gently from Eleanor's arms. The child buried his face in Caleb's shoulder and at last released a trembling sigh. Eleanor stayed in the saddle. The sudden warmth of the fire reached her, but it did not settle her unease. Somewhere beyond the dark hills, gunmen might already be tracking the trail she had chosen. Eleanor swung down from the saddle when Caleb motioned her closer. The dry creek bed smelled of smoke and pine resin. A ring of low flames cast long shadows across the packed earth. Children watched from behind their mother's skirts. Their eyes followed her like small, cautious lanterns. Caleb set the boy beside an older woman. She cupped his face, checked his wrists, and pulled him into her shawl without a word. Eleanor stood apart, arms folded against the chill. The silence pressed harder than any question. At last, Caleb approached. "You should eat." He offered a small wooden bowl of beans and charred corn. "Thank you," she said, her voice rough. He crouched across the fire. The light caught the scar along his jaw. "The men who took my nephew," he said quietly. "Did you see their faces?" Eleanor shook her head. "Just hats, dust. One carried a rifle. They laughed when he cried." Caleb's eyes narrowed. He glanced toward 2 warriors who were tying packs. "They will return. They sell children. Scouts say others ride with them now." Eleanor gripped the bowl. "They saw me." "Yes," Caleb said. "That is why you stay until dawn." We moved before first light. A gust of wind bent the flames. The smell of distant rain drifted over the ridge. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. "They'll come to my cabin." Caleb studied her. "You live alone?" She nodded. He let the silence settle until the fire popped. "If you return, you need watchers. Or you leave that place." Eleanor stared into the coals, hearing again the county men's boots on her father's porch. Losing the land had been a slow wound. Leaving it now felt like tearing open what little remained. Across the creek, a coyote called. The camp fell still. The fire had burned to embers. A gray hint of morning thinned the darkness above the creek. Eleanor sat with her back to a cedar trunk, knees drawn tight, her shawl damp with dew. Sleep never came. Caleb moved among the horses, silent as the breeze. When he approached, his breath showed in the cold air. "They scouted the trail," he said. "Tracks lead toward your land." Eleanor's stomach tightened. "They're going there." "Yes." The boy, Caleb's nephew, stirred beside his aunt, still wrapped in the shawl. Eleanor rose, brushing grit from her skirt. "I have to warn the neighbors. They may follow the creek and come from the north." Caleb studied her a long moment. "Your neighbors watched when you lost the land." "Did any speak for you?" The memory stung like a fresh cut. "No." "Then they will not stand now." She looked past him toward the pale ridge. "It's still my father's house. I can't just—" Caleb touched the scar on his jaw, a small gesture of thought. "You can leave what cannot be held." His words settled heavier than the morning chill. From the western slope came a faint crack, wood on stone, too heavy for an animal. Caleb raised a hand. The warriors froze. Eleanor held her breath. Another sound, a distant metallic clink. Caleb's voice dropped to a whisper. "They are close." He motioned her toward the horses. "Stay behind me." Eleanor climbed into the saddle, heart hammering. The boy's aunt lifted the child onto another mount. Caleb met her eyes, steady and grim. We ride east. Do not look back. The first rays of sun touched the ridge just as the echo of rifle bolts carried through the canyon. The day had barely begun.